Oh, yeah. So, if you have an intuitive sense that there is something awry, afoul, or askew in this country, which most Americans do have that sense because there is something awry, afoul, or askew in this country, I am offering you not only an explanation of what is awry, afoul, and askew, but also real solutions. And it's not a singular thing, obviously. There's a whole bunch of problems. But there are also a whole bunch of solutions. You have to remember that this is it's like an age-old sort of battle between the, well, I guess you'd say the authoritarians and the people that really do believe in individual freedom and I guess you could say Christian values. You know, you have to realize that that's the topic, is how much the how much Christian values have been exploited in the realization of an unjust, hierarchical America, the America that we see now, which is very much so void of real opportunity, void of real productivity. I mean, this is the very essence of what I term a scamocracy, because essentially the economy encourages scams. That's really the basis of our economy at this juncture. We don't actually produce anything really significantly domestically, and so yeah, our gross domestic product is predicated on media, and what is that media? How does that media get translated into income? It's through marketing and advertisements, and more, essentially, the businesses that are successful are the businesses that have access to this marketing apparatus, and those are either going to be extant major corporations that essentially orchestrated the unjust top-down hierarchical society that we are all suffering in. And I say all because even those captains of industry and the lords of our economy are also suffering, because to be trapped in a loop of greed and self-aggrandization, or whatever you want to call it, that is very, very, it's a very empty existence. If you need to chase the high score in terms of having more and more wealth, if that's the meaning of your life, you're in a miserable state. So, I mean, pretty much the entirety of the country is thrust into a miserable state, because either they're the victims of the exploitation directly, or they are actually enacting that exploitation, both of which are a terrible existence. I mean, so people have been convinced that you know, by elevating their status and amassing more wealth, that will make them happier. When that is true for a lot of people, in the sense that if you are impoverished, having more money really will improve your quality of life, assuming that it doesn't come with some type of cost that, you know, compromises the improvement in the quality of life. You know, essentially in America right now, about $100,000 is the peak of happiness per year. Like, that's roughly where per individual income ceases to greatly improve quality of life. Yeah. Also, you know, eventually the spiritual burden of how you amass the wealth will catch up with you. And by spiritual, I mean mostly like the esoteric psychological tendency towards altruism that most humans feel. And they feel it because humanity evolved to advantage altruism, because that's how we realized society and became how we realized what we've realized, you know, how we have civilization, how we have books and all these things were thanks to cooperation on a grand scheme, cooperation amongst and between, you know, almost all of humanity. You know, when you think of the initial steps that were taken in order to allow humanity as a whole to have the freedom to have the intellectual freedom that we have, I mean, there were a lot of individuals that suffered and died seemingly meaningless lives, died meaninglessly or whatever you want to say. Think it's like Rome. Rome wasn't built in a day. Not to say that Rome was an entirely just society, but essentially Rome coalesced the human effort to advance the concept of progress, and that desire to improve the plight of all people is probably the highest calling. And rather than that being a core motivator for the majority of people to realize not only personal advancement, but also to realize that advancement through the improvement of the collective by improving everyone's quality of life. That and also just like, I'm kind of going, our society is degrading in quality because the people that are placed in positions of power are talentless and ultimately puppeted to advance this corporate hierarchical society that we live in now. I mean, this starts really with Nixon. If you listen to the Nixon-Kaiser Permanente conversations, you'll realize that the society that we're in right now is very much so the Kaiser Permanente Richard Nixon dream. They're exploiting religion to keep people ignorant and to manipulate them to advance their own exploitation schemes. I mean, it's brilliant. Like, gosh, the utilization of religion to undermine the agency of the middle class. I mean, your agency is being eroded because religion is being exploited against you. That's true for everyone in this country and everyone across the globe. And it's not that I'm actually very much so inspired by the New Testament, even the Bible entirely, because it represents the movement from the eye for an eye philosophy to the turn the other cheek philosophy. And the key, I guess you'd say, commandments in the New Testament are really, the golden rule and no betrayal and no intellectual fraud. People and no religious hierarchy. The Pharisees are the religious political hierarchy, and the whole New Testament is about undoing that hierarchy and creating a more personal relationship with God, one that doesn't allow for the exploitation, because as soon as you place people in these positions of being closer to God than other people, then they get to exploit that proximity to God, and there's no limit to that. Because if you're speaking on behalf of God, then your power is unchecked, and anytime you have power to that degree, it's going to be exploited, and it's going to be ugly. And I mean, look at what happened with the Catholic Church. Look at Richelieu. This is when anyone convinces you to do immoral things, supposedly because God wants you to. Whenever anyone tells you you're too smart for your own good, whenever anyone discourages you from educating yourself, whenever you're being censored, whenever you feel like you can't say what you really feel because of consequences, whenever the dogma is so profound that you can't even discuss the dogma in authentic terms, whenever the consequences for thought are enforced, like whenever people are coming and not coming, but whenever someone, enforces thought limitations, I mean, you can't think about that. That is what blows my mind. Like, man, whenever anyone tries to limit you in terms of tries to prevent you from learning something, educating yourself, you've got to know you're being exploited. Anyone tells you you're too smart for your own good, you're in an exploitation scheme, scam, paradigm, bullshit. That is, oh gosh. Yeah. Educate yourself. That is the takeaway. That's what I'm trying to encourage everyone to do, is to educate themselves. Just don't trust other people's opinions. Go and read the fucking Bible yourself, for real. Read it all the way through, from cover to cover. It's important to understand, too, like, I'm not saying that you have to read it in a sitting or anything, but if you're going to believe in that, read it. Read multiple translations, and read it chronologically, in the sense that read it from the first book to the last, because it's meant to be read like that, because it's an evolution from the eye for an eye concept to the turn the other cheek golden rule, treat others as you would like to be treated. But the way that translation is too is treat others as, as though they were yourself, but also as they expect to be treated, like, because a lot of people will use that and manipulate, like, well, if I was that person, I would want this, but it's like, but if you were that person, it would change everything that you want as well. So, like, when people impose upon people their own, like, well, the thing I see more than anything else is like someone's asking for money or something. It's like, well, if I was him, I wouldn't want to get any help. I'd want to be motivated to give my own, like, as though a lot of people will excuse their cruelty and their sadism as though it were compassion, and that's not a real thing. Sometimes people do need to be, some whatever. It's, I'm not going to get into the weeds on that. All right, so wait, where was that? I don't even know. Just educate yourself. This country is being exploited because people are trusting other people that shouldn't be trusted over and over and over again. The very paradigm has been advantaging over and over and over again people that are cronyistic rather than talented. And then when you talk about the very nature of these pastoral relationships, the very concept is you're paying someone to be closer to you than God. That is an inherently exploitable relationship, a profoundly exploitable relationship. And just please be skeptical of the people you're trusting, including me. Fact check me, please. I encourage it. And regardless of who you are, you should actually read the Bible, and you should read at least 2 different translations, regardless of who you are. It's important to have a good understanding of that. I also encourage people reading a couple translations of the Quran, and all really, the Vedas, I think, are pretty important to understand. Like, I mean, keep going and going. There are a bunch, but in America right now, definitely read the Bible cover to cover, twice at least, just so that when people spew Bible quotes at you, you'll have better context of what it actually fucking means, and you'll be able to more easily discredit these notions that the Bible justifies abhorrent fucking shit, like the Leviticus thing, the man with another man. I mean, we're talking about a tiny little portion of the Bible, and also you have to remember, I would look into Antiquities of the Jews, but also look into Richard Carrier. Just look into Richard Carrier, so at least you have an understanding of the historical context of the Bible as well, because that is important. But yeah. Oh, and just don't be submissive, and don't be obedient without. Don't be obedient. Loyalty and obedience are different. Be skeptical. This is a very, very corrupted society that we're living in. It's been intentionally corrupted. And these churches are a big part of derailing people's rational thought. This is like, there are so many sociological parallels, and I just don't even want to draw on them. Just all I can do is encourage you. I'm going to encourage you, familiarize yourself with the Bible, but don't pick and choose. Just read it straight through. I'm not going to. It actually is worth it, regardless of whether you're an atheist or a Christian or whatever you are. It will advantage everyone if everyone's familiar with that book, and 2 translations at least, so you can see how the translations are being exploited. Also, remember, the Pharisees are the political/religious hierarchy. Really, I mean, they're pretty much the preachers. Keep that in mind as well when you're in the New Testament, because how they decide to translate these things is very relevant. It's the access to information thing. People, anyone who discourages you from educating yourself or tells you you're too smart for your own good is exploiting your ignorance, period. If they don't want you to educate yourself, and they tell you you're too smart for your own good, anything like that, they're exploiting your ignorance. There's no other reason that you'd say that. There's no reason that you would discourage someone from improving themselves unless you're exploiting their ignorance, period. Remember that. If you are being discouraged from educating yourself, your ignorance is being exploited. That's the best takeaway. Oh, learn about fallacies. That'll be my next little episode, because these are going to be daily, not only about, confirming my state of mind, but also, more importantly, about actually realizing the improvement in society that I need to see in order to feel as though, and that I could be happy or anything like that. I mean, what responsibility do I have to this society? A lot of people say an enormous one.